Well, y'all, I can't be on the porch today. I'm having to do it here in the studio, so hopefully the sound and everything else works out. Every single time I do it this way, we're always going to have some kind of weird problems. So, hey, hopefully it all works out. Anyway, December 7th. Here we are. You ever sit around with your own thoughts long enough to start philosophizing? I'm not even sure that's a word about stuff that nobody ever asked you to analyze. Well, that was me this morning, kind of staring outside when I was out there doing some work and then, just kind of looking at the trees like they owe me rent. And of course, thinking about December 7th, 1941, a day that will live in infamy, as FDR put it. Pearl Harbor. To the generation that lived through that day, it was like, I guess it was like the only way comparison I can possibly make it. It was like getting a tattoo on the national soul of the country. Not a cute little butterfly that, all the girls get on the ankle or something like that. No, I'm talking full back, black ink, like I just survived something huge kind of tattoo. Yeah, and those folks came out of it differently. No two ways about that. I mean, in a nutshell, they came out tougher, more patriotic, and sadly, I think convinced that Washington, D.C. was basically some kind of all-seeing oracle. And I think the worst part of it is, I think they raised their kids, to believe that if the government said the sky was green, that, well, you better go out there with your mower and start mowing accordingly. And look, I get it. When the world gets rocked that hard, you cling to just about any story, any official story that makes the chaos make sense. Sound familiar? I mean, in the modern day? Anyway, I think it's just human survival, and the powers that shouldn't be, actually, they absolutely bank on it. But I think once the dust settles, perhaps it's wise to start asking questions. What's wrong with that? What's ever been wrong with that? Why did that generation who survived basically a global war somehow, now people are going to get upset with what I'm going to say here, but like I said, I speak honestly from my heart, and honestly, I speak extemporaneously, so if it doesn't come out perfectly, I think you understand the reasons why. But anyway, how did they produce kids that never wished to hear an alternative version to any official story, despite those kids, the baby boomers, having lived through Vietnam, both Kennedy assassinations, Martin Luther King, 9/11, you name it, all the way up to the modern day, and then including the thing that just happened a couple of years ago. Why does that generation get so uncomfortable? I know I'm mixing things here, but why does that generation get so uncomfortable when you start pulling out a revisionist history book? I mean, clearly this applies to all generations, and mine is definitely not immune to it. But I've never seen it as bad as those that are among the baby boomers. I really believe that. Not all of them. Let me just qualify this once again. Not all of them, because some of the biggest movers and shakers in this arena of thought are, believe it or not, from that generation, many of them. But in my experience, a good 90 to 95% of them really could not care less and don't want to hear an alternative view. I mean, when you get down to brass tacks here, let's be honest, history is kind of like a compost pile. It really is. The longer it sits, the more the impurities kind of make themselves known, the more they come to the surface. And as it turns out, there are some, I guess you could say, lesser known historical tidbits about the lead up to Pearl Harbor that get people squirming in their chair like they just sat on a splinter. And folks, look, I got to be careful about how I do this. I really do, because I'm not going to get too deep in the conspiratorial stuff, although I could. I'm just going to talk about the messy, bureaucratic, humans being humans kinds of stuff. Those examples in history, at least as it applies to December 7th, 1941. For instance, the U.S. intelligence had intercepted diplomatic messages from Japan leading up to December 7th. Nobody argues that. There were warnings that somehow took the scenic route through the military mail system, and military experts have openly theorized for years, prior to that, the naval bases were almost certainly vulnerable to some kind of attack. Still nothing was done. Now, folks, I'm just citing the very, very benign stuff. Now, none of that stuff proves anybody plotted anything sinister. It just proves that governments are about as organized as a chicken coop in a windstorm. Yeah, maybe not my best joke there, but I think you get the point. Point being, but if you brought up any of that stuff to someone from the greatest generation of the baby boomers during Thanksgiving, you probably got either a 1,000-yard stare or you saw that turkey plate vibrate on the table when they got angry. And here's what fascinates me. Why does the generation that endured so much become so allergic to critical questions? I mean, seriously, think about it. Shouldn't the truth be able to withstand such minor scrutiny? Because believe me, I haven't even gotten into the big, big, big smoking guns out there. I mean, this generation, they survived ration cards, war bonds, blackouts, and yet a curious conversation about historical records makes them about as nervous as AOC at a spelling bee. I don't know. Maybe it's emotional. Maybe it's identity. Maybe a little bit of both, or maybe they're just tired of being challenged on a belief, and I suspect this is it. Maybe they're just sick and tired of being challenged on a belief that they've held for maybe 80 years. Look here, y'all, I'm going to get very, very honest with you. And you can ask Michelle if I'm lying here, and my son as well. In full transparency, the number one fear I have as I age is somehow learning to be okay with being spoon-fed BS. Easy to prove stuff, and we're seeing it happen all right now with Charlie Kirk and some of the other stuff, where they give you official stories and you're just like, all right, I'll believe it. And we're being told this stuff from known pathological and profligate liars. That's my biggest fear as I age. It's not the things that other people worry about. It's somehow, I'm thinking that maybe when I get to a certain age, that bam, a trigger happens and all of a sudden I just can't see the truth no matter how obvious it may be. Maybe this generation feels, and I suspect, because I've spent a fair amount of time thinking about this stuff, I wonder if this generation thinks, okay, look, dude, I've already filed this memory away under resolved. Please stop reorganizing the drawers. Now, once again, I don't think it applies just to that generation, but certainly mine as well. And I can give you example after example after example where people say, we'll never forget. But the second you break up a narrative that is a complete opposition to the official one, everybody's like, oh, you can't speak about it in good company. But here's the deal. And once again, I think this is true for every generation. When a moment defines you, you somehow protect the version of it that hurts the least. I've really thought about that. Probably spent too much time thinking about it, to be honest with you, but what else are you going to do when you're flipping a compost pile? If that version somehow gets questioned, they feel that it's not the history on trial, it's you. But I still think questions are healthy no matter the topic. I don't care the topic. I think questions are absolutely healthy. Because let's think about this. Nobody has ever improved a farm, a podcast, a family, a business, a nation by saying, don't ask why, just do what you're told. I mean, good night, man. If I lived that way, if I lived by that motto, I'd be farming like everybody else. And what would I have? I would have dead soil, no compost system, broken equipment, and probably a rooster living up here in one of the rooms. Don't tell Michelle I said that. She's probably not going to watch this, so don't tell her. Don't give her any ideas. I think you get the point, though. Instead, I'm going to continue to ask the dangerous questions, and I don't care who cares. I don't care who has a problem with it. I mean, is there a better way? If so, then I'm all ears. I'm more than happy to hear of another alternative way of doing it. And that's all I'm suggesting when it comes to history. For example, is it possible, just considering these facts, is it possible that important signals were missed before Pearl Harbor Absolutely. Even mainstream historians won't even argue on that point. Is it possible that military positioning made the fleet vulnerable? Yes, it is. Yes, and documents show that as well. Does any of this mean inside job? Well, no, but keep in mind, I'm only giving you the very benign data concerning Pearl Harbor, that is. And even with that very benign data, we should be taking, when you take it collectively, you should all be asking, maybe I ought to be asking some critical questions about everything else, but nobody does. What I'm trying to say, I think, is that humans are imperfect. Politics are greasy and messy, and bureaucracy can be about as nimble as a frozen goat. But here's where the Pearl Harbor generation, that generation deserves some serious credit. And I'm only going to hit some high points that come to me. They weren't cowards. Nobody could ever say they were cowards. They rebuilt, they fought, and they survived. My question for them now is a little bit different. I'm going to ask, can courage also include the bravery to revisit the past? In truth, I suspect that question should apply to all of us in every official story that they give us. To say, maybe the full story is bigger than what I was told in the headlines during wartime. Truth doesn't evaporate if you shine a little bit of sunlight on it. If anything, it's only going to get better. And history won't collapse if we read more than one book than what was prescribed to us out of high school and college. I mean, seriously, when I think, you know what, if the Lord should grant me the old age, and when I'm 90, and if a kid challenges something I lived through, something I really believed in, I hope I don't swat him away with a doggone newspaper. In fact, I hope I say, son, daughter, go dig. Dig deep. Ask the questions, and in this order, ask the who, what, where, when, why, and how. And then if you find something that I didn't already know, come back and teach me. That's really where I hope my brain's going to be at. Please, Lord, let me have that. Because that's how wisdom, I think, works. It evolves. Isn't it supposed to be that way in a healthy society? So to the generation that lived through December 7th, you have my deepest respects. I mean, I can't even, man, I could probably go just riff for about 2-3 hours on all the incredible history that happened at that time. You definitely have my respect. Your grit is carved in history. Not many other generations can say that. But courage doesn't end with just surviving a tragedy. Sometimes it continues by calmly asking, and calmly, you can do that, although I need to remind myself of that sometimes. What did we miss? What could we learn? Are we willing to see more today than what we could back then? Because I'm going to give you a prime example that just popped into my cabeza here, and it's regarding World War I. I think this is a good example. The Germans sank the Lusitania back in May of 1915, if I'm not mistaken. And of course, the mainstream media at that time told everybody all throughout the world these dirty, rotten Germans just killed 1,200 civilians for absolutely no reason. Well, they were just ruthlessly destroyed. They didn't have anything better to do. The Germans said it was a war vessel. We denied it. All the Allies denied it. Okay. I want you to fast forward from that time, 99 years later. Declassified British documents revealed that the Lusitania was in fact carrying crates and crates and crates of ammunition marked, I believe, like gun cotton, cheese, butter, things like that. I want you to think about what I'm going to say here. Maybe, just maybe, 116,000 American doughboys wouldn't have lost their lives in World War I if that information was made known back then. Maybe we wouldn't have gotten into World War II if that information came out 10 years after what happened there in World War I. Maybe the public would have said, they lied to us. Thousands of people lost their lives. And maybe we should reconsider what they're telling us now. Like I said, 99 years later, very few people know that history. So I guess in a nutshell, sorry to go so long, y'all, but I mean, believe me, I'm trying to keep it very brief. I'm not rewriting history. I'm just refusing to freeze it, just like it is outside right now. Every day that passes gives us a little more hindsight, a few more documents, more context, and I think we'd be fools to not look. The past isn't sacred marble. Like I said earlier, it's a compost pile. It heats up, it breaks down, and eventually reveals what was hidden when the ingredients, all of the ingredients, were in their raw form. If we care about the truth, and if we care about honoring the people who lived through that day, we keep turning the pile. Not to accuse, certainly not to dishonor, but to simply learn everything we can, because wisdom is never the enemy of memory. All right, y'all, with that, I got to hightail it and get off to church. Like my new shirt? Yeah, anyway. Well, folks, I'm going to end it right there. Go check us out at the website. I know a lot of people are asking me about bone sauce these days, and hopefully I can get out there. We had a little bit of rain, but hopefully it's enough to tamp down the fire danger. I want y'all to seriously consider what I said here and clip it, put it out there. I mean, this is information that the powers that should not be do not want everybody knowing about. Certainly not the history that I just told you about, World War I. Ever see that on the mainstream? Nobody has. All right, y'all, once again, hat tip to the greatest generation out there, because in so many ways, I really believe you were. I just hope that the generation you left behind starts waking up and asking critical questions about all the things out there. And I'm not just meaning them, I'm talking my generation and all the subsequent ones as well. We should never believe pathological and profligate liars. All right, hopefully this was a blessing to you. Until next time, stay alert.